Do you need help with marketing, new clients, or online reviews? MassageBook is your solution, streamlining all the challenging aspects of your massage therapy practice. This powerful software simplifies scheduling, payments, and marketing, allowing you to focus on what you do best, helping clients live better. Plus, sign up now with code ABMP50 and get $50 off after your free 30-day trial. Visit massagebook.com, create an account, and transform your practice today. That's MassageBook with code ABMP50 for $50 off. Don't wait. Give it a shot today. Introduce your clients to mailto Clinic, a new pain relief powerhouse for musculoskeletal pain relief. mailto Clinic topical pain relief products are the first to combine the anti-inflammatory benefits of functional mushrooms, including reishi, lion's mane, cordyceps, and shiitake, with proven analgesics, menthol, and camphor. Our ingredients work synergistically to offer deeply penetrating, rapid relief. mailto Clinic is available as an ointment, cream, oil, and roll-on, available exclusively to healthcare practitioners. Get your free 10-pack sample of mailto Clinic ointment by visiting mailto-clinic.com/get-free-samples.
The Greater Omentum, if you are unfamiliar, is perhaps one of the cooler parts of our anatomy. It's a covering, it's a lining, it's connective tissue, it's epithelial tissue, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's the Greater Omentum. I'm going to rename it in this episode, though. Why? Because when you learn about this blood, nerve, adipose, and leukocyte-infused sheet of tissue that lies posterior to the anterior wall of the abdominal muscles and anterior to the small intestines, you will see that it is so much more than an inert layer of belly. It is deserving of superhero status and a superhero name. The word omentum in Latin means apron, which checks out. The Greater Omentum kind of looks like an apron. And while aprons are great and all, I prefer to think of it like a cape, because superheroes wear capes. I know, there are so many analogies to superheroes in our bodies, but this one really is. You know how Aquaman is like if there was a fish superhero? This piece of your viscera is like if there was an octopus superhero, only it lives in our guts instead of the outside world. Here's the deal. If you look at our guts in most anatomy textbooks or Mr. Potato Head type anatomy teaching tools, you see the usual suspects: the stomach, the intestines, the liver, maybe a spleen, but rarely do you see an omentum. Don't get me wrong, humans have known about its existence for a long time. As a matter of fun fact, the word omentum not only means apron, it is also rumored to have been derived from the ancient Egyptians who, when embalming human bodies, used it to assess the deceased's omens by observing its placement and shape. Yep, you heard that right. They would investigate not only its appearance, but also its location, because it moves. Not like a bone might move when a muscle tugs at it, or how like an organ might grow or shrink with the onset of a disease, but more like an octopus. It can expand and spread out, slide around, search for what it's looking for, and can gather itself into a bunch if it wants. Which, hello, super cool. So cool, in fact, that I'm going to make you wait to hear more about this. First, because this is important to get the big picture, let's look at where the Greater Omentum lives and what the heck it actually is. Hint, it's not an apron. Rolling back in time a bit, when you were in utero, you started with this vertically situated gut tube that was central to the formation of a lot of your internal organs, which you now know and hopefully love. That gut tube was lined with this membrane, which, as you grew, it expanded out to line your gut cavity and became your peritoneum. The gut tube itself remained lined as well and eventually spit out your liver and your stomach, among other gastrointestinal components. So each growing organ, as they separated themselves from this tube, stayed connected with this peritoneal lining. The lining that stayed anchored to the internal walls of your abdomen became known as the parietal peritoneum, parietal meaning wall. And the lining that ended up encasing your internal organs in your viscera is now known as your visceral peritoneum. Visceral meaning guts. So in the same way that a bunch of bubbles dangles off a vigorously lathered bar of soap, the internal organs are a bunch of soft tissue bubbles contorting to fit inside our insides and lined with and connected by this serous membrane. As the naming of anatomy goes, all of this lining, which is essentially the same thing, takes on different labels according to where it is. The trick here is to know when these sheets of lining morph from covering a thing to connecting two or more things. And each time it is more connecting and less covering, it becomes a ligament. But not the kind of ligament you may be familiar with. Instead of connecting bone to bone, as has been the prominent definition since Anatomy 101, it connects organ to organ. And sometimes when we group some of these ligaments together, they take on a new name, like omentum. There is actually also a mesentery, and these are all kind of the same thing. The difference is this. The mesentery is the grouping of ligaments that help hold some of these organs to the abdominal wall, like the posterior aspect of the transverse colon and the small intestines. As you might be able to imagine, if we didn't have mesenteries, our lower bellies would be bloated with internal organs. But we do, thankfully. We also have some organs that are connected not directly to the abdominal wall, but to other organs, like how the stomach is attached to the liver. This would be an example of an organ-to-organ ligament. Hence, it is an omentum. The lesser omentum, to be precise. The lesser omentum is a couple of ligaments, the main one being the hepatogastric ligament, reaching down from the liver, hepa, to the lesser curvature of the stomach, gastric. Cool, right? Lesser omentum. This brings us to the star of the show, the greater omentum, the internal octopus superhero, the gastrocolic ligament. In anatomy speak, it's known as the gastrocolic ligament, gastro meaning stomach and colic referring to the colon. It technically attaches the stomach to the transverse colon. Its first demonstration of awesomeness, though, is its deviation from the rule that the fastest route between 2 points is a straight line. It takes time getting from point A, the stomach, to point B, the transverse colon. Sprouting from the parietal peritoneum of the stomach, that lining that covers the stomach, it extends down, folds over backwards behind itself at the pelvic floor, and then loops back up to attach to the superior aspect of the transverse colon. Considering that the stomach lies directly above the transverse colon, this is quite the detour. Its second show of heroism is its cape-like quality. Where it folds over itself down by the pelvic floor, it just kind of hangs there, like a cape might do off the shoulders of a superhero. Also, an apron might do off the waist of a chef, but you know, superheroes. Dangling down from between the greater curvature of the stomach and the top of the transverse colon, it rides the waves of the intestines. It's like a warm, wet blanket for your guts. And because there are so many important structures in your viscera, the abundance of blood, nerve, and lymph vessels trying to keep this region in check get caught up in the momentum of the greater omentum. Superhero quality number 3, it is a great storer of adipose tissue. Which makes sense, right? A flap of membranous tissue sitting in the belly? Fat is a really good protector of things, and we need a lot of protection for all of that digesting, assimilating, and processing that's taking place here. P.S. and by the way, Galen, the Greek physician and surgeon, posed that the role of the greater omentum was solely to warm the intestines. He figured this based on the story of a gladiator who had an omental resection after multiple stab wounds and then complained of feeling chronically cold for the rest of his life. Galen wasn't wrong. There is just so much more to it. So what does it look like? I suggest Googling some images on your screen of choice, but I'm going to attempt to describe it because, well, this is a podcast. Picture a large Ziploc bag. Now, using your anatomical imagination muscles, fill that Ziploc bag with a huge stick of butter. Smash it up a bit so it spreads out. Now add some olive oil to give it a little more juice. Next, take some blueberries and red bell peppers and slice them up into tiny slivers. Mix those with some saffron threads and throw that in there. And lastly, add some heavy cream. Zip that bag up, hold it up to your belly button, like you might do if it were an apron, zipped side up, and voila, your greater omentum. Side note, the other word root for omentum has a Latin etymology. The word unguent, UNGUEN, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, means fat, grease, or ointment. Meanwhile, the Greek word for fat or grease is lipos. Ah, for the love of lipids. Okay, let's break it down just to be clear. The Ziploc bag is the serous membrane, the butter is the adipose tissue, the oil is the serous fluid, the blueberry and red bell pepper slivers and the saffron threads are the capillaries and nerve vessels, and the heavy cream globules are the collection of lymphocytes and macrophages. This should give you a pretty good visual and a pretty good idea of what's at work here. Yes, the Greater Omentum keeps us warm, and truth be told, we are still learning what it is actually capable of. What we do know, though, is that this fatty blanket is a collection of protective and proactive components performing incredible feats of visceral health, making it, in my opinion, somewhat of an alchemist. Its transformation of our internal chemistry saves the day more often than we are probably aware. As I alluded to before, it moves, and this is its final and greatest expression of herodom. It doesn't have contractile tissue per se, but it does flow with the peristalsis happening underneath it, and it will rise and fall with the push and pull of the diaphragm. The craziest part, though, is that it moves beyond the waves of its surroundings. It appears to have a mind of its own. It gravitates towards disease or dysfunction, like an octopus spanning out, finding a meal, slithering over to it, and encasing it. It's kind of like that. The Greater Omentum will gravitate towards areas that are inflamed or damaged, like, for example, cancer in the liver or ulcerative colitis. Gather around it and adhere to it, attempting to limit inflammation, absorb foreign bodies, and help with immune response, all the while simultaneously protecting other organs nearby. Kind of like an alchemist superhero. You can start to see how the ancient Egyptians used the Greater Omentum to determine the omens that might have been present in the deceased. It tells a very clear story. Today, a surgeon or a pathologist performing an autopsy might use the position of the Greater Omentum to confirm any suspicions of what was present internally. Either way, the Greater Omentum is one awesome abdominal alchemist. I often think it would be really fun to rename a lot of our anatomy. I might keep some of them. I mean, the word popliteus is bubbly and fun to say. But I think of all the names for this anatomical wonder, Greater Omentum, gastrocolic ligament, apron, knower of omens, I would have named it Octo-Alchemist. And I think its tagline would be something like, to the intestines and beyond. Also, I know exactly what I'm going to be for Halloween next year. And here we are, the end of the episode. Thank you to the extraordinary crew over at ABMP for helping me get my words into your ears. And if you want to get any of your words into my ears, or more accurately into my brain via my eyeballs from a computer screen, drop me a line at rebelmt@abmp.com. That's rebelmt@abmp.com. I always want to hear your questions, comments, suggestions, or salutations. Also, if you're interested in checking out anything else I'm doing, head over to rebelmassage.com where you will find all sorts of fun things to click on, like homemade organic products for your practice, cool links to continuing education classes, thoughts I have typed up and posted here and there, and other Rebel Massage dabblings.
Anatomy Trains will be holding our flagship Anatomy Trains Structural Integration ATSI training in beautiful Vancouver starting September 16th, 2024. Progressively build your anatomical knowledge, hands-on manual therapy techniques, and most importantly, seeing and understanding postural patterns and developing strategies tailored to individual needs. We warmly invite you to apply today and bring your bodywork career to the next level. Visit anatomytrains.com for more.